Okay, so I suppose I should start by saying a few words about who I am and welcoming you. I thought I would welcome you in a digital way. So these are the binary codes for the letters that you see on screen, which I thought was fitting because we're going to talk about digital. Let me say a few words about what I have done in the past and who I am. So I graduated from this university like 30 years ago. At the time, you should imagine that all the things that you know as being your standard were not in existence. So I think that by the time I graduated in June 1995, I'd probably seen 3 sessions of internet and looked at 4 or 5 chat relays, they were called at the time. There was a protocol that was called IRC, and which was like the remote ancestor to your instant messaging of today. So we would have to connect to servers and try to speak to the right person, and it was a mess. But I have always been very, very interested by science and technology, which means that I made the bulk of my career in that field. And I started with a company that's part of this group, which is a Swedish company. And Kinnevik was active in financial services and telecoms. And at the time, mobile telephony was probably the most technological thing we could imagine that was touching consumers' lives. I think I must have been the 5th person to send a text message in Europe, which at the time, again, was something very revolutionary. Picture yourself a world in which a phone is a device that's made for voice, and all of a sudden people can send text. And it takes time before people start sending text. It takes a lot of time because it's just not in the mental representation of what a phone is all about. Now, 30 years later, you're using your phones for all sorts of things that have nothing to do with just speaking to someone. That's the span of the past 30 years has been the core of what I've done. And I started in telephony, went on to work for credit card business, which has many similarities to international telephony because you have clearing mechanisms. I won't get into those details. And then I worked a bit for Triodos, which is like it's probably the leading European bank in ethical banking that we would call like sustainable banking today. It was created in 1981 in a kitchen table somewhere in Amsterdam. And the guys who created that company thought that they would do banking services, but to do useful stuff that would support communities, society, environment, all the good things that we have today in what we call sustainability, right? I've been working as a freelance person, helping primarily European privately held owner-managed companies for the past 25 years. And in that capacity, I did some work for a company that's called Jamendo and is now part of a Belgian group of companies that's called Radionomy. They are specialists in sound products and in providing services for like music in public spaces and so on. And that's what Jamendo was all about. I'll give you a bit more about Jamendo later because there's a few cautionary tales there that one should have. Then I helped grow a digital agency business based in Luxembourg. And in a matter of 2 years, we went from 13 people in a former garage space to a company that was 110 people. We went from 700,000 euros worth of turnover to 11 million. I didn't do that alone, but I was helping the people who were running that company, and it was a privately held European owner-managed business. And then I went on to work in the media business for a wholesale group and went into retail for the first e-commerce implementation of Lola and Lisa. And then I joined a group that was called Emakina Group between 2016 and 2021, when the company was acquired by a US company called EPAM in a public takeover. There was a friendly takeover. We went from 640 people to 1,300 people, from 8 markets to 22 markets. And the job I had there was to work as what was called integration manager. Integration was the work that you have to do after you acquire a company, right? But I was doing a bit more than just integration, because I was actually in charge of growth, both organic and international by acquisition. And that's what drove the 22 markets. Then we went into EPAM, became part of EPAM. So Emakina Group was Emakina and the Reference, which is a company that you might know from, it's a leading digital agency in Flanders. And we became part of EPAM. I kept working for EPAM for a couple of years to help them with integration from the angle of being acquired in that case. And after 2 years, I decided to leave because, as I told you, I'm working for European, privately held, owner-managed businesses. EPAM is American, not owner-managed, and it's listed on the stock exchange. So these are just, that makes it a very different type of proposition for me. And I would love to share with you the reasons why I have this specialization. I kept going with my own business of advising companies, but I'm also now part of 2 ventures. One is based in Estonia. It's called Expect Pulse, and they're specialists in helping businesses adopt AI. Because one of the things that we say at Expect Pulse is that a lot of people are fighting for which is the stronger and most capable model, and I don't know what. But ultimately, there's a hell of a lot of work that still needs to be done for organizations to actually do useful stuff with AI. And there's one way of looking at AI, which is to look at it as something that's going to be able to replace every function that human organizations can do. Like you can have it do the job from A to Z. But in reality, it's much more complicated than that. And what we can see is that AI is really useful in helping pre-process certain things and in helping augment human capabilities much more than replace humans. I mean, the business case for augmentation is so much bigger than just replacement that it doesn't make sense to be aiming for just replacement, which is what we do at Expect Pulse. And then there's another company that's called Synspect, which is based in Belgium and specializes in electrical verification. So it's electrical standards for like homes, in your home, in the apartment that you rent, or in the place where we are now. There are electricity infrastructures that need to be controlled for compliance with certain standards that are valid in Belgium. This compliance work is quite sophisticated. There are people who go in field to actually check the infrastructures, come into your home, and they will be looking at the electrical board and be looking at whether the way you are physically set up is in line with the plans that you have for your home. And that is a very labor-intensive type of process, where what Synspect does is create a sort of assistant for the people who do verification so that they can be augmented in their capabilities as they do verification, and therefore can do the work with a better level of quality and reliability, and also with more productivity. Synspect is led by somebody who's going to be our guest lecturer tomorrow. I thought that this guy is a really interesting person because he's had a really solid background as a microelectronics engineer. He's worked for Thales, he's worked for a number of large companies. And he's now leading Synspect, and he has this really interesting way of combining and choosing well when to apply agile and design thinking and all those things, and when to apply more like maybe more conservative, more robust, slower methodologies, because there are just areas in which you cannot be iterating endlessly. I'm not entirely sure that you would necessarily iterate in places that have like critical consequences for human health or the environment, or I don't think we should be breaking with planet Earth, for example. It's not a good idea. So I think that Jean-Paul is going to be an interesting guest lecturer for you. That's it. Any questions? So a few years ago, I was invited to start teaching digital innovation here, which is obviously something that I practice a lot for my clients and their clients. And the journey starts today for you, and I hope it's going to be an interesting one. So let's see what we can do. I'd like you to join this, please. If you have mobile phones, or if you have your computers, you can just use, you can go to slido.com and just use this code, which is going to be the code for our class today. And everything that we say there remains between us strictly. I'll be giving you all the content that we share there, so you have control. And when the course is over, I'll be deleting all that. It's slido.com, and the number is 1683380. Is it active? Can you see it? Nothing. That means that my little extension works, which is good.
Do we create a profile?
You're welcome to do so. There are a few questions where I set up the questions so that when you provide an answer, I also know who provided the answer. That is because some of these answers I might want to ask those of you who provided them for more background, more detail. All right, so I'd asked you, I don't know, has everybody had a chance to look at Canvas? So there was a question about your expectations, and the idea was not for you to necessarily submit something. I know somebody did, and that's fine. But it was to have like clear ideas for what you're expecting. And the reason why I'm asking this is not just to please you, but it's to make the whole journey worthwhile for all of us, which means that anything that you expect, even if it sounds a bit unrealistic, or if it's whatever it is, just share, and we'll see how we can adjust. So I do two things in those kinds of cases. I will either change a bit what I have already prepared, so that we like add to the content or amend the content to meet your expectation. Hey, or I might, for those things that are more specific, like questions that people have that like personal. Sometimes I have participants in class here and in other courses at Solvay who have like questions that pertain to their own company, or personal questions as to what they will want to do in the future. And those I take separately. So you will see that I'll share with you on Canvas. There's a link to book free time with me. Like it's slots of half an hour that all of my students, all of the people that I work with can book and use my time for half an hour to discuss whatever they want. Okay. So when the topic is like more specific, too specific maybe for the whole group, I'll be offering people to just join that that opportunity. Welcome. So if you would like to join, it's slido.com, and the code is right there on screen. And as soon as you've joined, please give your input to this first question. I can see you guys typing and how many people have submitted stuff, so that's all good. And by the way, since you've joined a bit late, there's a recording going on, so you know we are recording for your classmate who's not able to join today. The recording is going to be strictly restricted to her use and deleted when the course is over. All right, I'll give another minute and then we'll review. In a few seconds. Yes, everybody's done. Everybody's done. Everybody's done. Let's go. All right. So there's a lot of anonymous here. All right. So how blockchain technology is reshaping industries, legal professions. That's interesting. Connection with crypto. Yeah. How AI influences job roles and the extent of AI's future development. All right. So I think this is typically the kind of expectation that's going to be pretty well addressed, because there's actually a section that deals specifically with blockchain and trust and all those jobs and roles that require trust. One of the things that happened with blockchain technology is that you can not only do transactions, but you can also do traceability. You can also do smart contracts, and that obviously has implications, particularly for legal professions. But I think that the simplistic vision that you can replace all contracts with smart contracts and get rid of lawyers is overrated. However, I do think that the combination of AI and blockchain is creating an interesting combo for legal professions.
What about radiologists? Because I hear a lot of people, not from this profession, saying it will disappear. It's not a good
Look.
But I don't think it will disappear. We always will be needing a doctor to sign the docs to verify do we want an AI to know whether we have cancer or not? I don't think we're ready.
It is a good question you're asking. So we'll get into that, because we're going to talk about AI and we're going to talk about the ethics of AI, because there's what you can do and there's what you want to do and what you would like to see happen in a society, right? So if you look at a society like, or a country like Belgium, you can say that with the framework that exists, legislation, habits, the culture, and the way people function, it's unlikely that people would be today super happy with the idea that they would replace all doctors and all lawyers by AI and blockchain. When you look at the US today, there's, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but when you look at the people who are influencing those kinds of decisions today, when you've read what somebody like Peter Thiel writes or has written, when you look at how somebody like Elon Musk proceeds, when you look at all the people who are in positions that are critical, there's the guy who's in charge of the financial system, the guys who are in charge of the Security Exchange Commission under Trump, are people who are willing to consider very radically different methods. So that creates a risk for that kind of stuff to happen. But there's two things that we need to imagine or to think about. One is whether it is even possible for it to work. And secondly, how do we organize the legal framework for it to work? Let me take a slightly different place, which is like company governance. That's something that I'm very interested in. Being a board director, having been a board director several times in my career, there's now talk about boards relying to some extent on AI. For example, an AI that would keep the notes of a board meeting, or an AI that can help the board decide on certain matters. Well, if the influence of the AI in the decision-making process is even traceably very, very significant, And that decision turned out to be catastrophic for the company, or turns out to generate legal risk with third parties. Who's responsible? That's an issue, isn't it? So we're going to discuss about all these aspects. I think that you're right to ask the question, particularly for radiologists, because that is the obvious place. But again, it's like what I told you earlier, and the thesis that we have at Expect Pulse. We do not believe so much in replacement of humans by machines, but we do believe very strongly in the profound increment of capabilities that AI can provide to all of us if we use it properly. And we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be one of our topics. Hope to learn a lot about different AIs that you find useful in small medium businesses and how to use them properly. Yeah, digital automation, yes, to a certain extent. And the course is up to date on recent innovation in the digital space. We will see that. You will tell me if it is up to date. I think it is, but we'll see. Agentive AI. Okay, agentic AI or agentive AI. So does everybody know what agentive AI is? So what's agentive AI? What's the question?
It's the AI that can help you cover multiple tasks. It's like a little intern that you have, and can if you like prompt it properly, you can make tasks.
Why do we call it agentic?
It makes autonomous decisions.
It can make autonomous decisions. What else makes it agentic? Why do we call it agent? Are you familiar with the concept of agency? So what's agency?
Provides a service, so that is a
Yeah. So the agency issue is when you have an entity that has an ability to self-determine what it does to a certain extent, to organize its work, to slice a problem into small sub-problems, to sequence the actions that are needed to address the problem as a whole by taking care of the parts, and there's no one telling it what to do and when to do. So we're going to be talking about agentic. I'll be, when we get into the AI part, I'll try to give you some of the technology without bothering you with too deep engineering and too deep technology. But for those of you who are interested, I do have like a good repository of papers that I can share with you very, very easily. So we're going to be talking about that, yes. Expectations to include learning about digital transformation strategies, different use cases, see which areas of strategic for action and ambition, how to improve business growth, customer experience, operational excellence through transformation. Boy, there's a lot in there. All right, so we're going to be talking a bit about digital transformation. Actually, digital transformation is one of the courses that I teach in an executive program here. I do so through cases. So I'll be going into some digital transformation. I cannot address all the facets, particularly those that have to do with stakeholder management and change management. However, the process I've included in the course, a process that I have developed over the years and used with many clients, which is designed for digital transformation and applied also in digital innovation contexts. What's the difference between digital innovation and digital transformation, by the way?
Digital transformation is when you have already an existing process and you want to make it digital, and that wasn't digital.
Yeah, so you have something that exists and you're kind of changing it to inject more digital stuff in it somehow. What if what you inject is actually completely new and doesn't exist before? Is that innovation or transformation? Well, you can think about, keep in your heads that in a moment I'll be asking you what you believe digital innovation is, and we'll come back to that point, which is interesting. So we'll be talking a bit about digital transformation as well, but obviously I need to keep the course within a certain boundaries. So I can probably go up to a certain level into digital transformation. But those of you who do have an interest in the topic, and the previous question about how digital innovation can be applied to SMEs borrows a lot from this question on digital transformation, because in a small and medium business, what are the characteristics of a small and medium business aside from it being small and medium? What else do you know as being very different in a small medium business versus a large business? large international, multinational company? What are the characteristics?
Governance is different.
Yes, governance is different. How is it different?
There's less, to
Yeah, it's more shallow. It's not as deep of a sort of pyramid structure. That's true. What else? What else?
So, accounting rules.
Bookkeeping rules, yes, can be different. Yeah, because small businesses tend to have a different type of different types of obligations of reporting to the market. They don't have the same obligations, so that is also a difference. What else?
Communication, I mean, there's a bit back to what you said, but the fact that it's like sort of more shallow and instead of a trade, you can communicate with different people way more easily.
Yeah, communication is it's like a more tightly knit like community, human community. When we're talking about small and medium businesses, there are the extra small and then the small ones where if you have like 30 people, it's like a tribe, it's like a village. It's 100 people is a village. It's not communication is different. Yes. What else?
I don't know, it's more with the potential to grow. Like a small business has like potential to transform its process to grow faster, while the international business has already processes.
So
it's harder to move and
it can
change.
be a more nimble organization. It can be a faster organization in doing stuff that can make it grow and can make it evolve. Yes.
I would say it's more flexible. Also,
Yeah, it can be more flexible. It has less constraints. Yes. So less procedures. It's less heavy and so on. What else? What happens to the people in a small medium business? There's something that happens in large organizations that you will not see in the smaller ones, which is called segregation of duties. Segregation of duties is taking a job and breaking it down so that more people can do the same job. They do a part of the job. None of them, it's like cars, right? You build a car on a production chain. There's the guys who are like super expert at putting wheels on the car. Like all they do is putting wheels on the car. They're really good at that job. They will never make a car, all of it, right? So there's a bit of that. The idea is that when you're in small and medium business, there is not necessarily the sort of luxury in resources to have more people work on one topic so that you can like not depend on any of them. In fact, the opposite happens. Sometimes the same individual will have 2 or 3 different roles. I told you earlier about our acquisition by EPAM when I was at the Magna Group. I still remember when we were during the integration process, we had to meet our new colleagues of EPAM, who were now the owners of the Magna Group business. And I remember that they were asking us, like, we need to have like a call with the people who take care of what we were talking, we were calling technology partnerships. We had partnerships with Salesforce, with Microsoft, with Adobe, with a number of players like that. And they told me we would need to, your people who are dealing with that, to meet with our people who are dealing with that. I said, yeah, sure. It's going to be myself and Cedric, my colleague. So at the Magna Group, we were just dealing with, one was more dealing with market side stuff, which was me on partnerships, and Cedric was dealing more with internal stuff, how we would use those technologies for our clients, right? And we went into that call, there was the 2 of us, and we had in front of us 15 people. A week later, the integration people told us we would need to talk to the people who are in charge of all the tooling and all the processes that you use internally to deliver the projects to clients. I said, yeah, sure. It's Cedric and myself. So again, the 2 of us were in front of 25 people who were dealing with that for an arguably larger company. But what we found was that we were concentrating functions that were distinct in the larger company, which was not a surprise, but that's typically what you have. When you think in terms of digital innovation, what happens when you have to deal with people who are doing many things at the same time? What's good about it? What's good about it? If you are trying to do something new and you're talking to one person and they deal with 5 people.
To understand better the processes and the link between each aspect of it, and this way can provide like compliant what's going to happen.
Yeah, so it's one person who has like a big overview of something larger that is more cohesive and can be like an end-to-end process. That's true. What else is good about it?
Also be that
Yeah. Why so?
because as I already mentioned, you understand the process better, and you're not going to waste your time at things which are not relevant or not going to add value you accept.
So that's one of the reasons of issues. But there's another one. You don't need a committee to decide. You need one person.
And decide what
Do
it
it,
is.
and that's it. So that is what makes companies so flexible and so fast. But there's downside as well. Okay, one of the downsides that I experienced in a previous business in the software industry is that you think it's going to be fast because it's just one person. But that person has their attention fragmented across so many things that actually the decision-making process can be as long as large companies, but for different reasons. Large companies is because you have committees deciding. And the time it takes for a committee to make a decision is proportional to the square number of the participants in the committee. Right? You have 3 people, it's going to take 9 times whatever time you take one person. You have 4 people, it's going to take 16 times more or less. It's verified as a rule of thumb, which means that you do have an issue in large companies because of the committees. And smaller companies will have a different issue. You're talking to a guy, he is the person who has like overview for the topic you're talking to them about, but that person has like a window of time talking about that topic now, and the next time he's going to have a window of topic on that topic is going to be in 3 weeks, because he or she is doing so many other things. That is one of the things you have to take into account when you're doing particularly digital transformation in smaller organizations. Those of you who are familiar with smaller businesses, maybe family businesses and so on, know that. You know, there's like 2 guys and they're covering the whole scope. There's so many businesses in Belgium with small family-owned businesses, and there's like the aunt and the mother who are taking care of bookkeeping and the brothers who are working in the front shop, and that's how it works, and it works fine. It's a different business. You cannot approach it in the same way you would approach a large business. So we'll be talking about that. Guest lectures and case studies. So we do have case studies and we do have case lectures. Guest lectures will be less this year than last year. Why? I redesigned the course. I have, there's one legend, one story teaching at universities that you build your course once and deliver it 25 times in the same way for 25 years. That's not what I do. I'm unable to do that. So what happens is that I redesign the course every year. And I do so because the world changes massively. So this year I did 2 things. One was reduce the number of guest lecturers, not because they were not adding value, but because I needed to create space for more stuff to happen while we're together. And creating space means that I'll be asking you to do some practical stuff, particularly with AI. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The second thing that I did was I removed everything that has to do with you writing essays, because I really know what's going to happen. And it's just natural. You will want to use those generative tools that you generate text. I don't mind. That's okay. It would be stupid not to do so, in my view. All right. So the point of you writing essays is, I think it has less value than you having prepared a topic and being in the same room, and then we can see how we've tackled it with different tools. So we can understand the logic, the process, and get inspiration from other people in the room. That I can explain. So the course is being redesigned. There's a bit less of guest lectures, but there's a lot of methodologies, how we overcome challenges. Case studies, we have 3 case studies. I think it's going to be giving you a good view for what happens in different industries, but also we're going to be looking at financial services. We're going to be looking at Industry 4.0. I'll spend some time talking about China. We need to talk about China. We have a tendency to look at the world in a very simplistic way, like the West is leading on a number of things, with the US first and Europe regulating, and the rest of the world is nowhere to be seen. And by the way, China is so-so because they have this political regime that is questioned. Yes, they have that political regime that is questionable from our standpoint. However, they also have excellent science and engineering, and they have a fantastic innovation ecosystem, and I think you should know that. So we'll talk about that. Okay. Digitalizing processes that are to be used by non-tech savvy personnel. Yes, of course, non-tech savvy personnel. That's clearly it. AI is an important subject nowadays. Want to understand how AI practically is being integrated into digital transformation strategies? Yes. But we talked about that. I think we can address it. How businesses adapt to the latest technologies. That's a big topic. That's a big topic. How businesses adapt. And a business perspective in a tech business. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be very much business, but I don't want you to look at technology as a black box. I do want you to understand what's in the box, not in detail. I don't want you to like. There's not going to be any neural networks programming in this course, but I will want you to understand what happens in the box, because that's what makes it possible for you to make a decision from a business standpoint whether you should be doing something or not. I'll give you an example. Last summer, we ran a pilot program, and it was for an industrial company called XYZ, and these guys were making machines. And these machines were going on production chains, production lines. And they had, for those machines, their clients were asking for spare parts. So the process for getting from request for quotation to order or to quote was 4 to 7 days. Why was that? Because in the process, what they had was clients were sending them emails, they were sending them faxes, they were sending them formalized PDF documents with the specifications of the spare parts they needed, but they were also sending them screenshots of pictures, SAP screens for procurement and purchasing in Indonesian, in Turkish. And that process has very, very specific business constraints. So that's a business in which there's like, the margins are low, contrary to what people believe, particularly if there is an option to use not original spare parts, like spare parts done by generic makers, but it's also a low opportunity business. Low opportunity business means that when the client is asking you for a spare part, chances of you selling something else, cross-selling or upselling, are really low. They're not in the right mind space for that. The client who has a production line that is not working, needing a spare part, needs an answer fast because they have a problem to solve. When they know they have low inventory in a given spare part that they know is breaking every 2 weeks, you cannot go into that client and say, hey, by the way, we're going to talk about your spare part thing, but hey, would you like to consider this? That's not going to work. Which means that their process with low margin and no opportunities to expand the business needed to be very, very efficient, very low cost. And currently they were doing that by sending those orders to a low cost country to be processed by people. And they were measuring those people by the number of orders they were processing every day. So what happens when you do that? What happens when you do that? Let's assume you are working in one of the low-cost countries and you're appreciated or not, depending on the number of orders you've handled in the day. What do you do? Yes, you try to do as many as possible. What does that mean? When you receive like a client who's sending you a shitty order with a screenshot in Indonesian, what do you do?
I guess I would not be very detailed about it because, like,
And if you can't do anything about it, what do you do?
put it aside and go to the next
Of course, that's exactly what happens, right? So what happened in that case was that people who were measured in the number of orders they were processing or requests for quotation they were processing. Receive one, looks shitty, leave it aside, move to the next. Looks shitty, leave it aside, move to the next. Looks okay, I deal with it right away. So what happens when you do that? Well, it's losing money, but in a different way that one might imagine. The pile of stuff that is shitty and needs to be processed later goes up, which means that the people who have sent you those shitty requests are waiting. They're not getting their order, which means that you are using low-cost humans to process orders that are fairly easy to process, and you're not using the human capability on those difficult orders that need specialized treatment, right? So what we did in that pilot program was use AI so that the AI would receive all of the requests for quotation and would basically take care of all those that were easy to process. It would run algorithms that we developed, like not OCR, these were vision models that are able to take anything that you give them that looks like an image, whether that's a PDF document that doesn't have a character but is formatted as an image, or a picture of a screen in Indonesian or whatever. It's able to extract whatever data looks like being data in it and do something with it by probabilistically saying, oh, that's a spare part number, oh, that's a quantity, oh, that's a price, oh, that's the name of the client, all right? And so that meant that we had to change the way in which those humans were working in low-cost countries, and we needed to change the KPI. See? So that's where pre-processing with an AI is going to help a process that is not working very well. If you're injecting AI into a process that's not working very well, it's not going to be as efficient. For example, if you were in that business and you were leaving aside those shitty orders, I could give you an AI that would give you more or less of the answer of what it means in Indonesian. You might be able to do the job, but it's going to be far less efficient than what we did in that pilot. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that and also how businesses adapt and what it means in terms of rethinking the processes, which is not business process reengineering. That's not what you should be doing. AI gives you an opportunity to actually organically transform the processes every single day so that they converge to the most optimal. Organically improve the data so that they organically converge to the best quality of data you can have. So we're going to be talking about that. Connect this class with our strategy advanced masters. Yes. So can you expand a bit on that? Can I just a bit? It's okay. So who's Edwina? Is that correct? Do I pronounce it correctly?
Yes.
Edwina. Okay. Go ahead. So tell me a bit about that.
Because the idea for me is I want to see a link between every class we do.
Yeah.
And so, because you said something interesting, digital transformation, all of those topics that we hear for so many years.
Yeah.
How do you properly adapt them to real firms? Because that's what I wrote. Usually in university, everyone talks about analyzing Zalando. I know we're going to work on Tesla, Netflix, all of that.
Yeah.
It's really nice, but this is not the real world. Those are US firms that have billions on their accounts, that have the possibility to call BCG and to make them decide, well, they feed them with what they want, they make it happen. Most of the firms are not working like this. So I'm really missing this point on, because tomorrow I decided to join a family firm and there will be a topic on that. And I cannot bring those strategies and say, oh, look what Netflix did. No, that is bullshit.
You're going to get shot
So,
if you do that, right?
Yes, and on top, you cannot
Of
do
course.
it the same way.
Okay.
So really trying to understand
I see what you mean.
how do you use that, and that goes with the point you said is working for those US firms, you're more European, and I'm also interested to understand that area.
Right.
And
Yeah.
let's be just hands-on and not.
Okay. So I think you're right and wrong, if I can say so. You are right in saying that there's a profound difference between those big companies and the reality that you're facing in a European firm, in a small-sized business, in your local reality. That's true. It is true today. Once upon a time, these big firms were small firms.
Mhm.
So not trying to do what they do as big firms makes sense, but trying to understand what they did to get there also makes sense. That's one thing. The second thing is that if you look at what they do and you just copy paste, that's not the right way to do it. And it's not the right way to do it because there's something that's called culture. It's the country in which you live, how people approach technology, how companies function, the peculiar culture of your own company, right? So what I'll try to bring you in this course is that's also why tomorrow's guest lecturer is somebody who is doing a startup in Belgium using AI in something that's very concrete and in a business that's very hard. Like people who go into the field and do controls on electrical standards, you're just not gonna be bringing them on board by saying, hey, I've got this gamified application and you're going to be able to share that on social media. That's not what they're all about. The guys need tools that work, right? Simple stuff. So that's why I wanted Jean-Paul to be around. Second thing is that I have personally been involved in bringing digital and doing digital transformation in businesses that are super conservative, like timber trading in Belgium. Timber trading in Belgium, I was working for a company that was like one of the large players of importing timber from Russia and Canada and Latin America. You don't talk to these guys like you're going to give them some magical tool and they're going to happily adopt it and go about it. No way. It takes work to convince, right? So I have seen the space in which you are, and we're going to be trying to make it very specific and extract from those cases what we can think about applying, but then think how to apply it locally, right? So we're going to be spending time. You're right to make that comment. Do not discount the lessons you can take from these companies, but do not take them as like state of the art because they're not. There's also bullshit that we say. You talked about the BCGs and McKinseys of this world. I have huge respect for them. But sometimes they also tend to think too much in terms of models, right? They tend to think that, hey, there's this like, has anybody heard about the Spotify methodology? Okay, so a few years ago, like 10 years ago, Spotify, the company that makes the solution, the music player you might be using, created 2 videos. And in those videos, they were explaining how they were working at that time in their company, in their business, with Swedish culture. And they were explaining that they were organized like informal groups. They didn't have a structure, they like a formal structure. They had chapters, they had teams, they had all that like convoluted organization of tribes and chapter leaders and practice leaders and people who were really good at how you deploy software. And they were explaining all those things. And it was really valuable sharing. But lo and behold, all of a sudden, this thing became a methodology. And some large consulting firms, I'll name them, it's McKinsey, they just went and sold a Spotify transformation to ING in Belgium. How do you think that went? Not well, not very well. And I think it's a mistake that McKinsey went into that for themselves. It's a mistake. It doesn't help them, right? So there's also that idea that if you're a large company, you can like shell out some expensive consultants and it's going to work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You have to use them for the expertise they have, for the kind of challenge they can bring to your management, to think differently, to think better, to be more rigorous, to be challenged. But ultimately, the people who have to do the innovation and transformation are the people of the company, no one else. So that means that you have to, when you think about innovation and transformation, you have to think about the capabilities of your company. You have to be very pragmatic. If the capabilities in IT are not there, you need to build them. If your data is not sound, you need to address that. That doesn't mean that you should postpone everything until everything is beautiful, but you have to build into your program how you address those issues, because otherwise you're going to stumble upon them and it's going to cost you. All right. So that's definitely something we're going to be talking about. And I'll tell you a bit, we'll talk about a bit about Netflix, but what I'll try to give you is some tools that can help you do analysis anywhere you are, basically. There's something called worldly maps that I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of. Has anybody heard of worldly maps? So because you're talking about strategy, I like doing strategy with worldly maps. And I'll tell you why it works really well. And that's something you can use in your like family firm easily. So we're going to be talking about that. And if you have any points during class, any of you in your fields that you feel is like at odds with what you know, feel free to challenge, because that's how we're going to grow. I'll try to address. Sometimes I'm expressing things with my own angles, how I see things and what I have seen in my professional career. But you are coming from different angles. I've had in my courses people who are coming from humanitarian businesses, people who are coming from public sector, people who are coming from art and medical professions. And they always have like a different angle, which allows us to also discuss the topic and explore it better. All right. So being up to date with the digital practice in business and the digital sector, yes, I think we're going to be able to do that. And discover new ways of working. Yeah. Okay. So it feels like we have a lot of digital innovation, digital transformation, quite a bit of AI as well. I think all those things will be addressed. If you feel during course that we should like spend more time on something, or if you need additional resources on any topic, let me know, because I do have like a little treasure trove of research that might be useful. So what do people become when they follow AMISM? And in particular, I'm following some of the people who have been quite active in my course. What do? They tend to do innovation in new businesses and startups or in family businesses. They work for established companies of different sizes. They tend to have marketing and sales roles that sometimes are not focused on digital innovation, but they do digital innovation in those functions. People who are in operations, production, delivery, not necessarily focused on digital innovation, but they do have to do transformation and bring in innovative practices in what they do, because it's just the pressure of where they are. They need to deliver better. They need to have a different way of doing things. And sometimes they're in general management, not necessarily on digital innovation. Not specifically on digital innovation, something that you will find very often. It's not a problem. The digital innovation is transversal. All right. So a few examples. Edward was here, I think it was three academic years ago. He's working in an innovation lab in Italy, in financial industry. Sarah is in Berlin. She's created a company that was called Joya, and she's now doing change management and consulting in addition to Joya. Robert, he was a really intense guy, really super positive, very like shiny personality, and he's now working for EY here in Belgium. Marilyn, she was also very interested in how businesses work from the angle of governance and how investors would like be affected by digital innovation and digital transformation. Marie's in real estate today. And Gauthier is somebody who was here last year. He's started a new business that's called Propies, and Propies is working on maintaining the whole set of documentation that is needed in real estate for companies that do the business of real estate as professional investors. When you are an investment company in the real estate business, you do have to manage the whole process from the moment you consider acquiring an asset to the moment when you're going to resell it, hopefully. And when you acquire it, you do need to have all the documentation of the asset so you can assess it and run due diligence properly. And then when you own it, you've got to maintain that documentation, because when the time comes to resell it, you will need to provide all that data to the people who want to acquire it so they can do their own due diligence. And that set of documentation about an asset is not very well maintained today, and it does create a lot of administrative friction that Gauthier and his partner are addressing with Propies. It so happens that I've been in touch with Gauthier since he left, and I'm actually advising them today. So it's a really fascinating space that in this case is an entrepreneurial story. I might put you in touch with those people if you want. So let's hear about you. What do you expect digital innovation to, what role do you expect it to play in your professional future? When do you need the break, by the way? Do you break every hour, usually? You would like a break now?
Every 10 minutes.
Don't do that.
You can answer the question.
You can answer the question, and then we take the break, all right? Okay, let's do that. So this is very much about what you see, like what digital innovation could be in your professional personal future. How do you see it? Do you see that you would like to be working in it? Do you see that it's going to affect you no matter what? It's really how you consider it. What role do you think it's going to play in your future? Completion. You could use this paper with password codes for guest role. I was like wondering, how do people figure out who they are? Usernames are like, oh, so each of you got one, all right? Because otherwise, like, that's interesting. Right, another minute. 7 of you have already answered. By the way, none is an answer as well. Can we do a test? We done? Everybody's done? Why do I have only 9 people? There's somebody typing. So the last person to type is welcome to commit. Okay, so there's 9 people. The final one, if you hasn't like sent the content, okay. So what? No issues. The aim to affect life indirectly. Do not aim to start my career in this field. That's fine. Use digital innovation in a way to complement activities, from optimizing productivity to automating tasks for a startup or a more established company. Yes. Hopefully not involved in driving digital transformation, because working in anything digital does not inspire me. That's interesting. Yeah, sometimes it's not that interesting. I mean, you don't have to be interested just because it's fashionable, right? But it is something that has a deep influence on the world in which we live. And you know what? You don't have to work in digital, but the world is being digitized, whether you like it or not. And if only as a citizen, you need to know. What you do with it is another story. And I do hope to make the course interesting even for people who are not interested in doing this like as a job or whatever. Crucial role in shaping career by equipping me with the knowledge, and I need to equip myself with the knowledge. Yeah. Strategic decisions, identify opportunities. All right. Yeah. Well, you know what? If you expect it to, it will. So I think it's going to play a big role. Yeah. Lots of businesses are shifting to that. The world is actually becoming digital. The thing is, we have found something that is so much of an augmentation of our capabilities, and it's been going on for the past 70 years somehow, that chances for people not to use it are very slim. The only thing that's going to stop it is if we stop having electricity or something bad happens. Work more efficiently, yes. Learning about agents, yes. Developing one, that's interesting. Maybe you want to tell us about it. That sounds good. Okay. And Edwina reshape the way of working, using capabilities, focus on other things, affecting without destroying. Yeah. Increase the value of what we do to reach our goals, enhance existing processes. Yeah. What should be done and what could be done. Optimization, operational processes within a company. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Who's Imene? Imene, is that correct? Okay. Hey, can you tell me a bit about that?
Optimizing operational.
Yeah.
Well, we optimize the
How things function, basically.
how things function.
So it's a bit like this story, no?
It's the operational role
Yes.
that the first level does.
Yeah.
And how to optimize that using AI. That way, if they would spend less time on doing less operational work and more time on doing something else or less.
And doing something else would be something like improving the process instead of being just deeply in it. All right. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So let me give you a break. How long are your breaks usually?
15 minutes.
All right. So let me give you 15 minutes and we reconvene at 10:35. Back in the room, please. You can join this because there's going to be another question. I will be posting the answers that everybody gave in the first questions, which had to do with expectations from the course and what people felt digital innovation might play as a role in their lives in the future. When I post that, if you want to add something, feel free to do so. So I can take that into account as well. You have signed already? Okay. So what do we have in store for today? There's quite a bit, so I'll try to now maybe be a bit faster. So introduction expectations is done. I'd like to do some housekeeping and rules because it has to be done. Then I'll run a quick introduction to the course in terms of points and how it works and how the exam works and all that. Spoiler alert, there is no exam. It's actually a project that you have to work on as groups, and you will come to present your project. I don't want to see you answer questions and repeat what I said in course. I don't think it's interesting to do that. And then we're going to be talking about what's special about digital, what digital products mean, what digital firms are, and I'll be giving you a few examples of tools. And in that process, I'll also tell you about something that you have to prepare for tomorrow, which we will discuss tomorrow. I'd like also to talk about how digital innovation is transformed by the existence of AI. All right, so we have a lot ahead of us. Housekeeping and rules of the game. So this is a co-creation. I need you to do the course. I'm not here to just say what I have scheduled to say, because then it's going to make it very, very, very uninteresting. And what I should do then is just record it as a podcast and ask you to listen to the podcast, and we meet on the 3rd of March and you pass your exams. The purpose of us meeting here is to create interaction, right? It is for you to have an opportunity to affect what happens and the flow of the course, and I'm happy for you to do that, because I think I have enough depth to deal with it, whatever question you come up with. Otherwise, I shouldn't be here. Second thing is that multitasking is a hoax. I always say that every year. You are not set up as living organisms to do many things at the same time. It's cognitively demonstrated that you don't do that. When you do many things and think you multitask, you're actually breaking down your attention to focus on one thing at a time, but you switch from one to the next several times in a given time span, which gives you the illusion of multitasking. Don't do that. It doesn't help. I think it's not. I don't mind. You guys can be. You can do whatever you like in class. You can. On social media, I will not control. You are adults, and that's how I will treat you. But I will tell you that this is not. It's not going to help. Not here, and not in what you do in the future. Are you familiar with that? So this is the Spanish Inquisition. Does anybody know Monty Python's? Right, so there's that story where the guys come in and they go like, where the Spanish Inquisition, our primary tool is fear. No, wait, we have two things, fear and whatever it is that they have, violence and all the lot. So why do I talk about Spanish Inquisition is because this is precisely what I would not want to become for this course. So there is no Spanish Inquisition here, and certainly no Spanish Inquisition about AI. So I would like you to tell me how you feel about AI in general. Very quickly, short words, 30 seconds. Just your feeling. I don't want rational beliefs. Do you feel happy? Do you feel exhilaration? Do you feel fear? Do you feel concern? Do you feel, what is it that you feel? And since we're talking about housekeeping and rules, I will not be the Spanish Inquisition of the rules, not be the Spanish Inquisition whether you use AI or not. We're just going to agree what makes normal use of AI a good thing in your learning, which is the only thing that we're interested in. How do you feel about AI? Are you happy? Are you curious? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you concerned? One word, really, feeling, just feeling. One word, your sentiment, 3 words, not a big sentence, not a rational explanation of why you feel something. I don't care why you feel something. What I care about is how you feel. 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds, 4 seconds, 2 seconds, Exactly, until the Spanish Inquisition comes. All righty, I'll just close the poll. Thank you. So this is your dominant sentiment. You are concerned and fearful, but at the same time, you have a degree of confidence, some fascination, some sentiment that it's great and amazing, and but there's the dominance is concern and fear. Okay, that's okay. That's precisely how most people feel. And the usefulness of you understanding that this is how many people feel is because if you are to think about digital innovation in certain fields and you want to apply them to those fields, you have to understand that this will be the dominant sentiment of the people you will be working with in real companies, in real life. That's how people feel. So I told you about this story earlier on. That was a pilot. What we learned in that pilot was that if we were coming in with the teams who were dealing with those orders and we're telling them, we're going to create a machine that's going to basically deal with all the things that you remember when I asked you if you were if you were doing the orders and you told me I would do the easiest ones and leave the other ones aside. And that's just normal behavior. It's a rational behavior. If the KPI is how many orders you do, it's a rational behavior. Now, if you do that, then your living depends on how you're assessed on the number of orders you do every day. And I come and say, I'll implement AI that's going to deal with all the easy stuff and you do the difficult stuff. What happens for you if I don't change the KPI? All of a sudden your performance goes down. And if your performance goes down, what happens? You risk being fired, right? So that actually amplifies the fear. Can you feel that? So if people are already starting with this kind of feeling and you're coming in a way that doesn't take care of that and doesn't do the real job of implementing AI in a way that makes their lives easier somehow in what they do, better operationally, so that they can focus on how to improve the process instead of just running behind those processes, it's going to be difficult. Okay. Same thing is true in universities, and that's why these days you have a lot of stuff being deployed. I received an email 10 days ago. They've deployed a thing now on Canvas, which basically tests your input for whether there's plagiarism and AI use and all that. It's going to be really difficult for the people who deployed that thing because I'll be asking you to use AI in this course. So if you see your scores go up, like, hey, there's 80%, you might be kicked out of the class, you will not be kicked out. I will pay as much attention to that score as I pay to the color of the bricks in designing the course, 0%. Okay? That doesn't mean that I'm not concerned with how AI might be used, but we will agree here what we want to do with AI. Okay? You're adults again. So I'd like you to tell me about your top 5 uses of AI tools. Just 5 words. Top 5 uses. What do you do with AI today? You might be generating text, you might be writing resumes, you might be giving it documents to summarize, you might be all sorts of use cases. You might be generating pictures, you might be doing whatever, generating presentations. All these are acceptable answers. All the answers are acceptable, actually. What are the top 5 things that you do with AI tools? Top 5 things. Another 30 seconds. Another 20 seconds. Top 5 things. 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look. Rewriting text, generating ideas, structuring text and assignments. Writing text, generating overview, words, descriptions, restructuring sentences, all right? Calculating calories, okay. Developing efficient routine practices, generating ideas about a theme, all right? As a research engine, generating pictures, brainstorming, come on. Okay, brainstorming, synthesize long text, rationalize thoughts. That's interesting. Can you tell me a bit about the research engine thing?
AMISM.
Yeah.
It's with perplexity and it just searches on the web or it's just Google, but
Okay, who's familiar with Perplexity AI? That's an interesting one. Perplexity AI, yes? All right, so it does indeed combine the search engine and the capabilities of summarization and retrieval of information. That is quite interesting, and it's Google better, isn't it? Which is actually making Google, I mean, when you discover Perplexity AI, you will not be doing your research in the same way. You will not be using search engines in the same way, right? It's really powerful. Have you seen the latest news of Perplexity AI? Like 3 weeks ago, they offered, or 2 weeks ago, they offered to acquire TikTok US. That's an interesting one because it's a combination of applications and AI, which is quite interesting. Organized thoughts help me prioritize tasks, organize workflow. Those who are working, using it to optimize, like to organize thoughts and so on, how do you do that?
I just use normal chat.
Yeah.
And I brainstorm myself with myself.
Yeah.
And I just put my thoughts in a list. And I ask the chat to organize the thoughts.
Yes.
And organize a workflow for me according to the things I want to do.
Right. So you're actually giving it a target.
Yeah.
Putting it in its thoughts and asking it to say what's the best way to achieve the target based on those thoughts. That's a typical use, right? Yeah. So that's very much in line with what an AI is made optimized for. Because the reason why these AIs are working is because we gave them a target which was to generate text that makes sense, and they became ever better at doing that. And they configured the network, the neural network to achieve that. So now there's the issue of hallucinations. How do you make sure that, how do you know it's not a hallucination what it gives you?
I just talked to like that person. And I had a question like, why you suggesting me? What if I would do instead of the question until it makes sense to me?
That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it's actually iterating on the same thing and using the device through successive iterations validate that whatever it does seems to be making sense. Actually, the fun part is that we have now evidence that if you are nice and polite in talking to an AI, it does a better job than if you're not. If you treat it like a machine and say, hey, do that, do this, do that, and you don't treat it properly. All right, what else can you do to validate what an AI is giving you? What else can you do?
Something.
Yes, what do you mean by that?
I start my questions with a text that acts like an artificial intelligence machine.
So you're giving it a number of instructions. What happens when you do that? So you're giving it an instruction and a role and rules, right? What do you do when you do that? What happens?
I have more raw information.
You add more raw information that adds context and it does something else. It creates boundaries. So you're telling it, for example, no self-description. Please do not self-describe. Please do not use jargon. Please use language that the layman person can understand, and so on and so forth. All right. So that's quite interesting. All right. Scripts, brainstorming, roadmaps, mentor, video generation. Who does video generation with it? Tell me a bit about it.
I started using HeyGen. It's like a video for AI video generation where we can create someone and give him a script and it actually looks very realistic. Right, Jackie? No, I don't know, it's called Jackie, but it's like it's the same. You can tell him how to look like, how to talk, and then you give him a script with that information in it, and it actually gives a nice looking video that's first or used for
Yeah.
Spanish platform.
Amazing, isn't it?
It is.
All right. Okay. What limitations do you see
What
in doing that?
sometimes you have to reprompt it very often to make sure to get the right product. So you have to reprompt it up as like little bugs or anything until you get the right fit.
So
Never
is
had
it
so
is
far.
it its own product or no?
Hmm?
Is it like autonomous?
No.
It needs a lot of your input.
Yes.
Okay.
Without mention.
So the quality of what you're going to get from an AI is dependent entirely on your ability to guide it. It's going to be very dependent on your ability to use it in a competent manner. To use it in a competent manner, you need to understand how it works to a certain extent. Not necessarily too much, but when somebody says, hey, I noticed that if I speak like nicely, it does a better job, that's an interesting thing. It's validated by research, right? It's done. Why does that happen, by the way? Why is it that when you talk to it nicely, it's doing a better job? Is that because it says, oh, that person is nice, let me be nice and good to them? Is that what happens? So what happens?
Reflecting the tone that you address it with.
To a certain extent, yes, but that doesn't necessarily make the content better. Why is its content factually better?
They keep it more on the human side aspect, it's more emotional.
Can you say a bit more about that? What do you think? How do you think that happens from an engineering perspective? What might happen? Difficult to say, isn't it? What do you think?
Isn't it because it's humans training it with our data? So it's trained by humans and therefore
And so what?
so we write, well, we feel the thing with our thoughts as humans, and the more we feel it, so it's fed by humans. So it reacts to humans.
It's actually a good answer. It's the positive bias. The full set of documents, let's assume that something like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude or whatever. Let's assume that they have ingested every single thing that has been ever written. Like that's going to be books, it's going to be stories, it's going to be essays about psychology, about human behavior, behavioral economics, all those things. And all our books, all our stories share with the reader how behaviors are caused by other behaviors, how positive and nice behavior leads to positive and nice answers, how people who are better behaved are more successful. That's what we teach to our children. So this is a case of positive bias. It's a bias, it's just bias. In that sense, everything that an AI is going to be producing has to be considered as hallucination. You have to consider every single thing that an AI produces as hallucination. And actually, you could consider it as neither hallucination nor something that makes sense. It is just the output of the AI. The output of the AI becomes valuable not in itself. It becomes valuable because it comes in front of your eyes. Your video has value because it comes before your eyes. And because when you see it, you can spot exactly what needs to be fixed for it to look like Thiago saying something. So the value of what output there is not in itself, which is the reason why I took out all of these edits from this course. I don't care about the output. I care about the process, how you think. It is how you're going to interact with it that's going to be interesting, all right? So writing code, that's an interesting one. Who said that? Who plays with code? Who makes it generate code? That's an interesting use case. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sometimes, if I need something,
Yeah.
And I know a bit the logic of the code,
Yes.
I can just ask it to write it, see what it does, try it, and then
And what do you use to do that usually?
I once did it to make a transcript
Yes.
of an audio file because it was an hour long and I had to pay otherwise online.
Yes.
I just wrote the code myself. I'll learn from my own device.
And which tool did you use to generate the code?
I use Python.
Yes.
No, I use ChatGPT, sorry.
ChatGPT
And
wrote
I
the
let
code.
it write.
Have you tried something other than ChatGPT for code?
Not yet, but I've heard Flow.
Claude is really good. Claude is really far better than ChatGPT. But you should try O3 Mini when it becomes available to the wider public. Because that's going to actually Mini High. It's going to be quite interesting in terms of coding. That's an interesting use case, you see, because here we have somebody who says, hey, I've got something that I need. And what he says is, I have a problem, which is I have this audio file. And if I just leave that bloody audio file as it is, I'm going to spend the next hour looking at it and taking notes. And I have an initial situation that's unsatisfactory. I need something else. And he devises that the something else means transcript, right? He thinks my solution is going to be to transcript the audio into text so I can browse through it, I suppose, right? And therefore, I'm using the AI to generate the code that's going to produce a transcript. So in that case, the AI is building the bridge between my initial situation that I find unsatisfactory to a situation that's a target situation that I consider to be the good answer to it, right? And it builds the bridge between those two. When you bridge a problem space to a solution space, you're innovating. Because you're actually tackling a real problem. And if you do that in a way that is different from what already exists, you're actually innovating. The different from what exists might be the thing in itself. In this case, it's not. Transcript is not new in itself. It might be the way in which you produce the thing, which is the process by which the transcript happens, which in this case is, hey, I've got an AI that's written code for me, and it does the transcript. That's innovation. It might be the way in which people are going to use something that already exists. For instance, hashtags. They emerged on Twitter many years ago when there was a limitation of 140 characters. And it was an easy way to find content, which came from the world of science, because scientists tend to write, and they use those hashtags to be able to retrieve their papers easily when they have their own note-taking system, right? So in this case, we have a transformation of the engineering logic in itself, because in the old days, we would say, we have a problem, we analyze the problem, we design a solution, and then we write the code between the two to make it happen. Now the code gets done by the AI. What you could have done is even more than that. You could even have started by saying, this is my problem, this is my desired solution, and give me options. How can I make it happen? And actually, your desired solution, is your desired solution the transcript in itself? Are you interested in the transcript as such? No. What are you interested in as such?
An easier way to process the audio format to process.
What's your goal in processing the audio file? Why do you need to process it? What do you need to achieve?
Writing reports.
Right. So you've got the report to write. You've got notes from a meeting to write. The real need is not the transcript. The real need is the notes of the meeting or the report. So if you were to tell an AI, for instance, hey, I've got this massive audio file. I don't want to spend an hour. I don't have an hour to spend. My end situation is not the transcript. My end situation is to get to a point where I have a summary understanding of what was said in that file or a report about what we said in that meeting. What might be options? And the AI is going to generate like a bunch of options for you, some of which you can think of yourself. Like there are online tools that make transcripts. There are tools that generate meeting notes based on the meeting, like Otter AI or others, right? And one of the solutions might be you can write your own code and run it on your machine. Can I help you with that? So the nature of how we imagine new solutions is changing because of AI. Right? Like it's very, very similar to what we changed with programming, right? Because traditional programming is we have program, we have data, and we will do software development and running, and that's going to produce results. That's a traditional way. digital innovation or digital transformation waves 1 and 2. Now we're moving to a very completely new step, which is number 3, which is I'm going to give data and results. So what data I have, what results I want. The machine's going to generate the program and run it. And I will get a solution, which is a new piece of software. Can you understand the difference? Here I have data and I'm writing a program. I'm running the program to get results. For instance, I have data about weather patterns. I'm writing the program that's going to give me the forecast for the next day. When I'm running it, I get the results, which is the weather forecast for the next few days. In this case, I have data, which is weather data, and I tell the system, hey, I need a system that's going to give me forecast for 14 days. What do you know about it? And it's going to like run on data and find a way to process that data in order to achieve these results. The clearer I am on the data, the clearer I am about what the outcome is that I want, the faster it's going to give me a solution that does the job. And then I can run the solution and get more forecasts, more results. So if I can show the machine the input and the desired output, it generates the function that I need. That's what training AIs is all about. And you can understand that this is a fundamental transformation of the pattern by which we create something new. So I want you to try that in the course of digital innovation. I want you to use AI tools to do that kind of stuff, and you're going to run an exercise, right?
I was kind of doing that on the finance course.
Yeah.
Because I came late and I didn't attend basically almost the whole course.
Yeah.
So I was trying to reverse engineer.
Yeah.
Because he provides only the results. So
Yeah.
I was putting in the problems and results, and the AI was not able to handle it.
Which one did you use?
ChatGPT. Yeah.
You should really use Claude again, or use the next version of it.
Yeah, it was struggling with.
It's actually an interesting case. If you want, you can bring it and we can try it. Yeah, it's actually a very interesting use case. This idea of reverse engineering something that I have the result of, and I know what goes in, and then I need to find the bridge between those two, and the machine's going to generate it. If it has enough background, it's going to be able to do it to a certain extent.
For the same situation, I also have a result, but I prompt the ChatGPT and telling it to think with the logic, with the same logic that we have the results in, and finish doing the problems for the same logic.
Yeah.
And it was like,
You had good answers.
yeah.
So that's the prompting technique of giving it a role and saying, hey, you act as a competent finance professional and professor at university, teaching people. You have given them this topic, and this is the result that they should get to. Now, every other question that I'm going to give you, use the same logic to achieve that. And what happens is that then the AI is going to be focusing on that part of its knowledge or its network that deals with finance problems, and you will get better results. Yeah.
But at the moment, all AI focuses on text, right?
Nope. There's multimodal AI these days deals with.
But the ChatGPT that we know, is it usually text?
No, ChatGPT is multimodal already. Let me show you. I can talk to it and it can answer. If I cannot do it now, I'll show it tomorrow. It's a setting problem that I have. It doesn't get the sound of my But maybe it's not right now. So, hey Adi, can you introduce yourself?
Of course, I'm on AI teaching assistant, Papanastasiou's course on digital innovation and transformation. I can help you understand key frameworks, analyze case studies, structure assignments, whether you're working on business model design, strategy mapping, or AI ethics. I'm here to guide you. Let me know what you're working on.
Can you tell me about worldly mapping, please? Can you tell me about
It might be working mapping, a strategic tool used to visualize the value chain of business, understand how different components evolve over time. Worldly mapping helps organizations make better decisions by showing what needs to be built, bought, or improved based on competition, user needs, and technological evolution. A worldly map consists of a value chain listing key components from user needs to supporting systems. An evolution
I'll go get
axis
coffee.
showing how components link innovation to commodity over time.
Right. So I'll just give you access to it because it's actually on the link that I'll provide in the course. But this is my teaching assistant. I configured a teaching assistant that has a number of the things that I'm teaching here. Some of them represented as JSON files, like the worldly map, for example, so that it can help you structure business model canvas and worldly mapping and so on. All right. That is pure sound. If this thing doesn't go through transforming the sound into text so that it can process it, it's pure sound. Same thing for vision. Can you name a system that is based on vision, pure vision? That's an AI system actually.
Look at Sora.
Sora is generating video, but something that you can see every day. Something you can see every day that actually uses AI. Yeah, so there's some applications like that. Sometimes they even connected glasses to that kind of stuff. So I can watch you and I know who you are from your Facebook profiles and so on.
Spotify. Sometimes I use the enhanced AI to shuffle.
But is it vision? It's not. Is it vision? Does it
No,
look
no,
at
no.
something? It's something else. But it does generate your playlist more or less dynamically based on what you've already heard.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good application as well. Vision, pure vision.
Can get ANPR cameras of police where they can check
Yeah.
the plates.
Yeah, so that's computer vision as well. Checking license plates. Actually, I have the guy who was the engineer behind that. He's a PhD in computer vision and he's part of SynSpec. So he's the guy who created those machines that send you tickets when you go speeding tickets. I will not give his name. Okay, so what do you see? What object do you see every day in your life? If you walk in the street, chances are you will see one in a matter of 10 minutes. Oops. No. It's a good try. Yes. But in an object that treats picture without translating it, it's pure picture. It's a vision AI.
To capture the speed of the cars.
Nope. So autonomous driving, you're familiar with it? Tesla. Familiar with Tesla? So Tesla has an AI chip built into the machine, into the car, and it's been there since 2016, and it does pure vision. Everything is done with vision. So that's multimodality that I was telling you about. All right. Okay, so a few of your AI tools. Let's not do it like a text, but let's talk about it very quickly. Tell me a few names of AI tools that you're using. ChatGPT. What else? Gemini. Which one? ChatGPT. Which versions?
The first
So what? 4.0 or 1?
for O,
Yeah.
I started with 3.
Oh, 3 million. Yeah. Okay. What else? So Gemini. Which one do you use? 1.5. It's the one that's available now. I think so. Yeah. Copilot. Yes. What else? What do you do with Copilot?
I do some research.
Yep.
I'm quite impressed because it gives you the references directly
Yes.
compared to ChatGPT where you have to ask.
Yeah.
So let's say I trust more Copilot when I need to
It feels.
screen from data, and since it has, I think the way it's designed also with these new numbers next to what it says, for me it's a pure analysis of what's online and put it into a sentence instead of ChatGPT, which for me,
You're not so sure, actually.
yeah, and I have the impression their feelings is inside.
You're right.
How to say,
They're sort of, yeah.
it's less factual.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, since I know that Copilot uses ChatGPT, so it's
So you see, there's an element of trust in what comes out of the machine, and actually there was Perplexity using Perplexity does something similar. That's why people like Perplexity, because it ties what it says to specific sources. There's something else that's called Wise One that does also summarization of pages in a very nice way and finds content. What else?
Zero and DeepSeek.
Yes. What do you do with DeepSeek? Which one? R1 or C3? Right. Okay.
Using basically just put in the research question or
Yes.
the research topic, and it finds you all the related articles and papers to it. Isn't it third place? No, it wasn't plus.
There's a bunch.
There's a
Okay.
bunch, yeah.
So one thing that is certain is that you have like hundreds of tools out there. Hundreds of. Not all of them have their own model, and there are dozens of models. What is the scarcest thing in that space? Is it the models? GPUs is one issue, like processing power. The data. Data is a really big issue. Like good data sets, fundamental to do whatever you have to do. So if you are in a business and that business has massive amounts of data, for example, you are in a law firm, and that firm has all the files from all the previous cases it has litigated. It's massive data. It's very useful data. Usually that data is not digital. But these days you can easily scan the data and use just images of the data and have the machine process them. You should you should never submit that to a cloud AI. You should do that with your own tools in infrastructure control, because that's where your value is. Question? No? Okay. All right. So the data is really.
I know that a lot of big companies are now having their own AI tools, as you said, to not the all the
Yes.
data. But how can I make sure that the AI tools they have are as good as the AI tools in the market like ChatGPT? Because I know that people say that it's not as good as ChatGPT, so I'd rather use that, for example, but they cannot do the data. So
Yes. So that's a trade-off. All right. So the thing is that those like major providers, cloud providers like Anthropic, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Perplexity. Perplexity, by the way, is that search engine that combines search and AI, and they have their own foundation model. In addition to that, they are using R1 these days. They are using Gemini. They're using OpenAI's tools. So they have like APIs to different tools. plus their own model, right? These companies have massive infrastructures and their performance is almost certainly better than any internal model. So it's a trade-off. Sometimes you will have to accept that you have less speed, comparable relevance, but because if you are using an open source, a real open source AI that you're running on your infrastructure, you will get good results, particularly if your technologists have actually fine-tuned that model to the needs that you have. So that's going to be very, very relevant, slower than what you have, but you will do the trade-off of slower, hence maybe less enjoyable to a certain extent, but safer from the standpoint of your data. You can run these models on your machine, actually, right? There's a trade-off. You have to accept the trade-off. And these days, there are also ways to run complete models on dedicated infrastructure within your walls. NVIDIA has produced something that's called the Jetson, which is a small machine that has GPUs, and there are different configurations, and you can actually run complete models locally. Not the big ones, it's a mini versions of the big ones, but they can be sometimes sufficient for what you want to do. And at least you have the certainty of not releasing your data to someone else. Remember, when you're using a cloud tool, their interests are not yours. They function for their interests, not yours. So you have to be careful about it. In addition to all of the legal issues and regulatory issues that have to go there. Okay, so I'll just move from that. Okay, so this vision is about intellectual curiosity, critical thinking, collaborative ways of working, collaborative between yourselves, but also with me and in the course. And I do want to emphasize the importance of academic integrity and plagiarism. I mean, I don't want to be a party spoiler, but you actually need to still preserve that way of doing things well, because that's how you learn. You're here for yourselves to learn, right? When you use content that is not yours and you're not referencing it, you run the risk of it being detected, and you're actually not serving yourselves. This is not a course where we're trying to kill you and give you bad grades. It's a course where we want you to grow and learn. All right. So this is what I do. So I would like to be careful about your own work and proper source attribution. You can use AI, I don't mind, but say you've used it, and I have no issue. You can use it for just part of what you do, or all of what you do. You can use it to review a first version of what you've produced. I don't care. That's okay, right? So long as you keep track of what you've done and you're able to explain why you used it and what it gave you in terms of output. All right. There's obviously some legal stuff. This is the European directive that was voted in June last year. It's called the AI Act, and it has a number of provisions. It's a very long document. I'll give you a copy of it if you don't have it already. But it has actually decided, the European Parliament has decided to have this framework of really unsafe uses of AI, somewhat unsafe, somewhat safe. So they have this sort of grading system. I'm not entirely sure I think is the right approach, to be honest. I think it's a good approach when you are dealing with medical devices, and you have to consider that they are really dangerous for human health, somewhat dangerous, and where the risk-benefit balance is good or average. But I don't think that it's the right framework for AI. However, that's the legislation, and we have to consider it in whatever it is that we do. All right. So the text is useful to look at. Even if you disagree with it, it's useful to look at, because when something exists, you can improve it. I'm not a big fan of regulation as a means to become leaders, but I'm not a big fan either of innovation without any sort of boundaries and any sort of thinking about what we do. So we need to find the right balance. I'm not sure we're there yet. I think that we have in Europe, we have a deficit of doing stuff that is innovative, and maybe excesses in terms of regulation sometimes, and maybe not the right framework to regulate. But that's going to sort itself out, I think, under the pressure of just reality. So what I would like you to do is be responsible at using AI, please. Be careful about the data you're providing to those tools. We're going to be doing some of that during the course, but be careful about what you do. No personal data, no identifiable data. know things that can expose you or other people in ways that you don't want. That's all there is to it. All right. Any questions about these ground rules and all that lot? We've already started talking about some of the stuff. I mean, that, for example, is part of today's course, so I will not go into as much detail because we already talked about it. Any questions? So the rules are pretty simple. You're adults, and I will treat you as adults. I will not be behind you. I'm not even very interested in what tools are telling me about whether there's AI in your content. I don't care, actually, to be honest. I don't. I know that these tools have lots of false positives. I'm not using them, and I've redesigned the course so that the course is able to cope with whatever that exists in terms of AI tools. All right. So no Spanish Inquisition here. What's in store? We want you to have a good representation of what digital innovation is all about, and to understand some frameworks and tools that you can apply in real life. There's going to be researching and exploration a lot, and there's a guest. So that guest is called Jean-Paul Barrera. I'll give you a bit of his profile in a second. He is an engineering person. He was trained at the University of Technology in Mons. He worked for a number of established companies, including Thales, in applications from defense to deep hardware. He's one of the few people to whom you can give a design of a chip, and he's going to look at it and say, "Oh yeah, sure, it does that, 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 that." I don't even understand what it says, but it's actually what the thing does. He's really competent in it, and he used to be. He actually was one of my students in another class here, which was about digital transformation, and another one marketing in the Executive Master of Management, and he is now the CEO of Synspect, and I think it's going to be an interesting session tomorrow with him. You'll see he's a very approachable person. You can actually ask all sorts of questions, and please take the opportunity to question him on how he sees the future. Some of your questions about AI were about what the future of certain jobs is, about the role of technology. One point that's interesting with him is to ask him how he is actually choosing between methods for developing new stuff. Like, should we all be agile all the time? I'm not entirely sure. All right. There are 4 types of work. There are 4 types of areas of assessment. There are cases. There are some discussions online. There are 2 topics. The purpose of those discussions is not to annoy you, but they are places where you can share knowledge between yourselves from different angles on a given topic. It enriches the course. Please participate. They're active until the end of this month. And there's the final, the exam is actually a project. So you will get 3 options of topics that you can work on. You prepare for those topics. You come into a classroom. We have a session in group. You will be making a presentation of 20 minutes, 40 minutes Q&A and discussion, and then you're out of the room and you get your grade, and that's it, right? So there's no you coming into a room, me giving you pieces of paper on which you will write stuff, and then I check them. We don't do that in this course. And your participation is more than welcome. The formats are individual and groups. There's a heavy emphasis on group work, because I think that's where you will learn most. That's the format that gives you most trust in understanding the topic and in practicing the stuff. So there's a total of 2,550 points in this course, which then get converted into grades on 20. Okay, these points are distributed as you can see them here. So there's some for cases, some for participation, some for your research. The exam is considered to be research. The yellow thing is individual, and the blue thing is group work. You will see that group work accounts for the bulk of what you will be doing here. And what we want is you to participate so that you learn, you contribute, and you have a better quality of experience. The exam is going to be 47% of what you would get in terms of final grade. Right? I think it's a fair balance. Every year I'm trying to keep the exam between 45 and 50% so that it has a weight, but I do want people to be active during the course, because that's you learn better like that than preparing for a bloody exam. All right? Any questions on that? No? Yes?
How is the participation? How is the participation of the group?
Sorry, how is what?
How is the participation?
Oh, that's really easy. We have some sessions that happen during class where you will be going out as small groups and preparing something to bring back to the class, and that's participation as group. Does that make sense? Okay. Right. So there are a few cases. There's going to be Kiva for tomorrow. Don't kill yourselves on this one, please. There are a few questions. There's some really simple stuff to do, like a business model canvas. Everybody's familiar with it, right? And a wordly map. Wordly map is more difficult. If you don't quite get there, it doesn't matter. We'll be doing it tomorrow together. There's going to be the Chinese case on financial industry and Tencent, what Tencent does in payments. And there's going to be Tesla, where it's actually there's a no missing in Mammoth, but hey, Tesla is going to be about understanding an industry that is affected in every way by digital, because the product is becoming more digital, it's becoming electrical, it has massive sustainability implications. The use patterns are changing, it's going to pay-per use instead of investment. The distribution network changes, and the industrial processes that are used to produce the product are changing. There's a lot of Industry 4.0 in that space, and therefore it's a really rich space to examine. So your final work is going to be in 3 weeks, starting today. There are three topics. You can work on the university of the future, like what does university become in a world where there's AI? Today, established universities have the same feeling as you have, like they're concerned and fearful that AI is going to destroy everything we have about academic integrity and blah, blah, blah. But I'm pretty sure we can design the university of the future to be leveraging AI instead of fearing AI. So let's try to see what we can do there. There's a second topic that is using loyalty mechanisms to support sustainability, and you can use everything you want that is digital or non-digital. You're free as far as I'm concerned, but you will probably find it more meaningful to use digital technologies there to support sustainability. And there's a final one, which is about sustainable mobility, and that's both urban mobility and long-distance mobility, right? You can pick any of those. You're organized as groups. So there are groups for the exercises and different groups for the exam. Why do I do this? Because the groups for the exam are smaller, and because I want to give you an opportunity to work with different dynamics and different personalities. The way the groups were organized was done automatically by a machine, so I don't know who you are between yourselves. I hope you're able to find a way to work together properly. So that's your challenge, right? And you will have the exam on the 3rd of March, but you can already start giving me some drafts, questions whenever you want, and draft versions of what we'll present. You can send them over during the week of the 24th of February. I'll be looking and providing feedback so that you can adjust and develop and maybe focus on certain areas for the third quarter. Clear? Questions? Okay. Schedule, I'll just move on. This is the theoretical schedule. I always try to provide a schedule, but ultimately what matters is the questions you're asking and the topics you're interested in. If we're not doing everything in the sequence that it was foreseen, it's okay. I'd rather answer your questions when you have them instead of having you wait and then there's a lot in the course. Some of the stuff can be provided. I'm trying to use the time we have together to give you what makes sense to have as interactive, and there's going to be some additional material that comes in the slides that are easy to process and read. Feel free to do so. If you want to use the slides and send them to Claude or Gemini or whoever to make like summaries, feel free to do so. I don't care. That's okay. You will also have access to my GPT, that is my virtual teaching assistant. Adi is super competent to help you make summaries if you want. All right. That's it. Any questions about this course stuff and so on? No? All done. Okay. All right. So what's special about digital? What do you think are factors that make digital worth considering specifically from the standpoint of innovation? Very quickly, a few words. what makes it, why do we even talk about digital innovation? You've had a class about innovation. Why do we talk about digital? Why digital? Why digital innovation? What makes it worthwhile? Does it even, is there anything that makes it worthwhile? You can say it doesn't make sense. We shouldn't be having this.
There, the lifespan, the innovation and the lifespan of things is too fast. So every time there's every few years there's a huge breakthrough, and with the youth breakthrough, so I think that's
Okay, that's an interesting example. So you can type it, and you can type it as like maybe the accelerated cycles of evolution of products, for example.
Everything becomes digital, basically, and if you don't join the movement, you're being left behind.
Yeah, the economy is becoming connected. So there's but why then do we need to talk about digital innovation, not innovation in general? What's the difference? Right? So, but the reason is good. Like the world is becoming connected. So you need to be part of that connection. Yeah. So you can type that. Yeah.
In terms of optimization and scalability, that's how we could use innovation, digital innovation, to integrate with.
So you think it's easier to scale, or it touches a larger, it's easier to optimize and scale. All right. Yeah. That's a good reason.
Main factor is that there is a lot of data available nowadays for companies to use. So
Yeah.
switching to digital allows them to extract value from this data.
Yeah, that is the fundamental, right? The thing is, the very reason why digital even started is the ability to process fairly large amounts of data in a very efficient way. Otherwise, it would be like doing calculations by hand, and it would take centuries to even process one request, ChatGPT, or one calculation of a weather pattern, right? So yeah, that's one of the foundations. What else? Why else? You can type if you want, or you can say what you have in mind. Does it make sense? Does anybody think we should not even be talking about digital innovation, and innovation is good enough? You're free to think so. That's okay. Any other points? Want to add something?
The questions that more like digital innovation that you probably want to spend more time on.
Yeah, so digital is that space that's going to remove the friction of stuff that are not necessarily interesting, that are easy to automate, and that we can get rid of and focus on others. Yeah. Anything else? So what makes it really different? The acceleration is a part. The speed of feedback is another part. The ease with which we can play with software and adapt it, mold it, is really what makes it interesting, because we can change it easily. We can simulate a lot of things. We can create twins of digital factories and train workers, for example, for what happens when the factory is on fire, and you don't need to lit the factory on fire, train people to deal with it. So all these things are valuable in themselves. Yeah.
I was going to talk about automation and
Yes, automation as well.
just change the dots.
Yes.
Less people.
Yeah.
Train them differently. You need guys in the control room.
Yeah.
But we can foresee the fires far faster. It's easier to spread the information.
Yeah, so you have a connected like factory that you can basically manage a bit better. What else has happened in the industrial space that is really striking? It's called cobots, collaborative robots. So in the old days, in the early days of robots in industrial places, the robots were placed inside cages because they had no sense of who was around. They were programmed to do certain standard motions, and if somebody would find themselves in the way, they would just kill the person and not even notice. Whereas today's robots are able to adjust to what happens to the environment, so we can make them work collaboratively with humans. That's why we call them cobots. They're collaborative robots, and they can stop movement if there's danger for a human person. They can collaborate with humans on certain tasks, leaving the human operator on what they do best, and having a robot doing what it's specialized at doing. So that also creates differences. But we'll try to see what this is giving us. So there's something called a digital product. What is a digital product? Why do we call it a digital product? What do you need to have a digital product? You said something earlier that was true, which is data. That's one thing. What else do you need for a product to be digital? You need electronics, hardware, you need software, you need functions, you need a user interface, you need rules and processing, you need behaviors for the product, all the things that make your phone, all the things that make your machine, all the things that give you something that produces a result for you, but there's considerable depth behind it. We spoke about GPUs earlier for ChatGPT. When you see an answer in ChatGPT, there's a whole thing that's happening behind. There's a user interface, there is a neural network, there is programming for what comes to the user interface. There are databases, there are rules, there is hardware, there's all those things exist. There's infrastructure that powers the place where we have all the hardware. All these things happen, right? So there's considerable depth behind whatever you do. Do you know how much energy is used each time you create a query on ChatGPT?
1 liter of water.
1 liter of water is one of the resources, but in terms of energy, how much energy is one query? With one query on ChatGPT, you can power your phone for a day. Yes, it charges up the phone for a day. A smartphone, a modern smartphone. One phone, one query, one day.
It depends what kind of query, if it's like a very detailed resource query.
That's 5 phones. If it's a more advanced models. But now we do have less processing power, and that was one of the debates around DeepSeek, isn't it? Is that it requires less resources. Now, how much less is also a question. But we have to keep that in mind, is that digital has this feature of being non-material. It feels like it's ethereal almost, but it does have massive implications at physical level in terms of water resources, in terms of hardware, in terms of energy we're using. So we will need to think about that. So a digital product is a software-enabled product or service that offers some form of utility to a human being. I thought that this was a nice definition in an article that was published a few years ago on Medium, and you have the link if you want to take a look at it. So last year I asked ChatGPT with that question, acting as a professor in a business school, which is a bit of your prompting, like you give it a context and it bounds what it's going to give you, because the responses it's going to give you are going to be bounded by the idea that it's a professor that seems to be specialized in a business school. We talk about digital products and digital innovation, and this was the answer last year. I would be curious to try the answer this year. So you're welcome to actually try later today and maybe tomorrow report how different the answer is to what I reported here last year. That's going to be one thing that you can try to do tomorrow and show me tomorrow. A few tales that I'd like to tell you very quickly. So microelectronics, cloud resident, EAI. Does anybody know what EAI is? It's enterprise application integration. It's pieces of software that we use to connect other pieces of software, right? I was involved in that kind of business many years ago, and it was digital, and it was difficult to show to clients. So sometimes digital is difficult to show to clients. Sometimes it's difficult to make it, to bring proof of what you're claiming. And when in addition to that, you have a pricing model that is based on usage, you have to show somehow the impact. That's one of the things that ChatGPT achieves is exactly that. It shows you one use case, which is a conversational AI, which makes everyone understand why they should be paying for accessing the API of OpenAI. Actually, the GPT model has been in existence since 2019, 2020. I was playing on the playgrounds of OpenAI with GPT-2, GPT-3, and then it became ChatGPT. right? So the cautionary tale is that when you do digital innovation, you have to make it tangible. You have to make people understand what it is. Otherwise, it's very difficult for people to decide, right? And particularly if, like in that case of on-demand AI, which was the business I was involved in, we had this clever pricing model that was so clever that nobody could understand it. Because at the time, nobody knew what paying for consumption of IT resources looked like. It was in 2004, 2005. That business, which we somehow had to stop at some point in time because we didn't have enough like clients, because clients could not see what they should be paying for. There was exactly the same thing became a company called MuleSoft, which was acquired for many $1 billion by Salesforce many years later. And what MuleSoft was really good at doing was, first of all, they run thing open source, but they also made it accessible for free up to a certain volume. Without support, with community support by all the users instead of support by the company. And they also had a second version, which was you would pay for and get support from MuleSoft, right? So you have to make things tangible, give people the opportunity to experience what you're doing, because otherwise they will not be adopting. And if they don't adopt, there's no innovation without adoption. There's no innovation without adoption. If you have that fantastic idea, you're making something new and nobody uses it, nobody cares. It's not innovation. It's research, not innovation. Okay? And I respect research a lot. Second cautionary tale comes from Jamendo. I'll tell you more about Jamendo tomorrow morning because it's a nice story. So, what's a digital firm? I would like you to tell me what a digital firm is, and you have 2 minutes to say what you think a digital firm is. You can say so by giving an example or by giving a few characteristics. One short sentence. What is a digital firm? A digital firm. If I tell you digital firm, what do you think it is? Just type it. Just type it.
And you get your digital firm?
I don't know, you know. You should type.
Because it's more like cheap stuff.
I don't know, you know. What do you think? Yeah, you can type. I'll give you a quick minute. Type fast, and we move on.
It's times.
I said what?
Times.
Yes, that was a previous slide, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what spines are. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, 10 seconds. What's your definition of a digital firm? 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so how do you define a digital firm? Firm that offers digital services or a firm that employs digital tools in its process and operations. Odoo and Netflix. Yeah, a company solely based digitally or digital product like SaaS or chip markets. Firm who provides services online which are intangible to provide the customer support in the digital concerns. Digital solutions and software to support these processes, leveraging AI, data analytics using software systems like an ERP system. Every firm is becoming somehow digital. Ah, that's interesting. They're digital when their products or service is not tangible and is delivered through a digital platform. Let's try that. So we're hearing a lot of intangible, a lot of software. So is Tesla a digital firm?
Is AI and online platform and leverages technology language.
Okay, so for you, it's AI, leveraging data, technology, and a platform. Right. Okay, so for you, Tesla is a digital firm. So who thinks Tesla is not a digital firm? Why so?
Transportation. The purpose of this is to manufacture cars, but they use digital processes for the integration of the AI in the car, or like anything that is related to it. But it's not a digital firm by itself. It uses digital processes, but it's not a digital firm.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think tech is different. Tech firm is different than a digital one. The digital is more software based, and the tech can use, for example, infrastructure, IoT devices, cars, and everything. But digital, I think it's more software.
So is Apple a digital firm or not?
I don't know. For me, it's more of a tech firm than
How is what's I mean, how do you define the tech?
I don't know, but they no, it is because they have cloud. Yeah,
How do you define tech? How do you distinguish between tech and digital?
if you have, for example, even IoT devices that's or just manufacturing electric cars. For me, it's already a tech process because we have to implement software to make it work, but it's more of a physical feeling.
So if I understand correctly, your distinction between tech and digital is material, non-material, tangible, intangible, hardware versus software. And that's a bit more like your story as well, right? That's why you were asking about NVIDIA, right?
We can, for example, see we sell computer laptops and things, but we also have the software, the iOS.
So they're both digital and a bit non-digital. Right. Can I question the idea that we should distinguish between hardware and software? Because ultimately, if I give you hardware, just hardware, I would argue you can't do anything with it. And nobody is able to sell something that is hardware without software on it. There is always a software layer. Otherwise, your hardware is just not operating. So maybe the idea of distinguishing between hardware and software is not the right way to approach it. Maybe a digital firm is something else. Maybe it shouldn't be defined by what it actually does. Because you're right, Tesla does cars. But is Tesla a car with a computer on board, or is it software with wheels? It's software with wheels, more than anything else. In the way it was designed, even, they started from the idea of first principles. They never questioned, they never thought about, hey, wait a minute, how do we make cars? Let's make cars in the best way and then add software on it. They thought, okay, so we need something that takes people from place A to place B. What are the minimal things that we absolutely need? We need wheels, because that's the easiest way to make something move. We need a box in which we put the people so that they are safe. We need it to move fast, and we need it to provide certain services like navigation and the whole lot of stuff that the Tesla does. And they simplified the problem of building a car, because all of a sudden it became a very different object, right? Pretty much like a device that is your tracker of activity, or an Apple Watch or whatever, is a watch, but it's not exactly a watch. If you go talk to the watchmaking industry in Geneva, they will tell you this is not a watch, right? So maybe we have to think a bit differently about what the digital firm is all like. Everything you said is correct, by the way, right? To a certain extent. But the idea that we should distinguish between hardware and software as such, maybe not so. I would argue that a company like, who's familiar with a bank that's called JP Morgan Chase? Is that a digital firm? Yes, no?
It is currently buying assets in the data world.
Yes, they're doing that kind of stuff. Do you know that they have more engineers than Google and Meta combined? they have more software engineers than Google and Meta combined. They do some very wide stuff that are super digital. So digital, not digital. Surprising, isn't it? So we're going to talk a bit about what the digital is, right? So let me quickly move through that, and then so I can give you some of the stuff you need for your feedback case for tomorrow, and it's going to be fine. This is how we used to represent companies before software became a thing in the economy. Are you familiar with the value chain? You saw that, right? So there's the core of the activities down here, like the nice production line. The model, the mental model is the production line, okay? And there are the overhead activities, hiring people, managing the firm, running human resources, you're running its technology, doing procurement, all those things. And when you run all those things and you sell your stuff, you hope to make a margin. That's what's represented here. This is the model of Michael Porter of the late 70s, beginning 80s. Watch how customer support happens just at the end of the whole thing. We're designing the whole thing and customer care happens next. We do deliver customer care only when we have actually sold the stuff that we produced. That was the industrial world in the most traditional way. What happens with the advent of software and digital technologies is that the whole thing explodes. It becomes a network of activities, some of which are in-house and some of which are outside of the walls of the company. You can have some SaaS solutions today. I run a business. One of my businesses is a two-person company that does consultancy. We have digital solutions that we can provide to our clients for which 15 years ago, we needed to have an in-house team of 25 or 30 IT people and run servers in our basement. And now it's over, right? But it's still part of what we do. It is something we rely on. You cut us from that, we don't do any business, right? Okay. So the business has become a network of activities that are interconnected and that provide the same services, not all of them within the same walls. Some are outside, some are near shore, and so on. And that has a fundamental economic explanation in which I will get tomorrow morning. You don't need that today, which is the theory of the firm of Ronald Coase. Ronald Coase asked a very simple question back in the 30s. He was asking, why do firms exist? And we will answer that question tomorrow morning. And it is important because it talks about the economic reasons why firms have changed in their structure and they have become something that looks like this. They have become network systems. Networks of activity, some of which are in-house and some of which are outside. And these systems rely on a set of practices that are centered around customers. They have goal-driven activities, like when you run a digital campaign, for instance, in digital marketing, you have small goals that you will be tracking real time, which means that you get quick feedback. It's back to your acceleration point. That is also a characteristic of a digital firm. Then we will be doing a lot of iterations and a lot of feedback. We keep flexibility for innovation because things move faster and faster. Companies become not stable structures, but almost organic realities. They evolve every day. Things change every day. There are opportunities to do things slightly differently, and it's fairly easy to change a number of things. Not everything, but fairly easy, a number of things. We can run business experiments. We can try stuff. We can create a landing page with new pricing structures and see how the market responds. Do they convert more or do they convert less? It's fairly easy to do. Has limited implications. And we can run evidence-based management because we have the data if we do this properly. We can make it about data, more than about who talks better or who talks louder. There are a few things that are just facts. It's just how we measure things. We can question how we measure things, but this isn't what we measure. And what do we decide based on what we measure if we've agreed that this is how we should measure stuff, okay? And then we have data, computing, connected objects, and integrations. And these four things here define the spine for the question that we got earlier, right? So a spine is like a little unit, local, that has local processing. So it has like a chip inside and it can process data. It has some memory, it can store data. It has connectivity, to the outside world, either to other spines, through the network or direct, ad hoc, or LAN or 4G or 5G, and it has sensing. So that's the concept of a spine. It has a sensor or sensors. So why is it useful? Because I can measure the environment. I can, for instance, in the city, I can deploy this kind of devices, and I could measure how much CO2 there is, how much pollution there is, what the temperature is, and they're all connected, and I can have local picture as well as a global picture, bring back the data to one data center and have a complete map of what happens in a situation. True for cities, true also for industrial facilities, true for service businesses, true in a number of things. That needs data, computing, connectivity, and integrations. So connected things and integrations. So this was a digital firm until 3 years ago. I was explaining it like that because until 3 years ago, nobody knew what AI was. Nobody knew what machine learning was, and I couldn't explain that to business owners. So if you consider this to be the digital firm, you will see that part of it is practices, part of it is hardware and hard stuff and technology and software and the hard stuff, the engineering stuff. Everything that's above is more practices. It's more ways of doing things that we can do now that we couldn't do in the past, okay? And you will see that in digital firms, at the core, there is always data. If you don't have the data, you will have a hard time digitalizing anything. If you don't have the data in a digital format, but you do have the data in a known sort of archive paper, with AI, you can get it to become digital much better than you could a few years ago. These vision models are really powerful for that. So the data is used by an infrastructure, servers, databases, and so on, and software solutions, which are create capabilities and create and require skills from the organization. And these skills are organized by a company as processes and methods. And these processes and methods are used to deliver stuff to the market. That creates analytics for how things go in terms of adoption and in terms of usage, and creates feedback loops, which makes us learn and improve everything that's below here. And then we have the relationship that the company has with the market, the sales part, the community management part. It's one way of looking at things. I like it because it's like an onion, and you can see that the core of it is data. You don't have the core, you just don't have a firm in the digital space. This is an example for how you would represent it. So this is based on the value chain. Think of your value chain as being that, where things that are more like inbound logistics and what you buy to transform is here, what you transform is here, and what the client sees is up there. So your value chain now is like that. And what we do is that we take all the activities that are connected as a network, like what you see on the screen here, and we spread them out on the second axis, that is the maturity axis. Things that are genesis are research and development, new stuff. We haven't brought them to market yet. Things that are custom are the things that we start seeing work, and we primarily use it for ourselves, more or less, right? They are custom, we don't sell them as such. When they become mature enough, we can start thinking about making them available to third parties as products. And then they become commoditized because they become just very common. For example, the first companies that started doing cloud-based software, like Salesforce, when they started in 2001 or 2000 or 99, they were here. The question was, is there a way to create a CRM for which people don't need to install software? They get the CRM function, but they don't have to install the software. Yeah, that could work if we could run it on massive servers and give the function through a browser to people remotely. Hey, can we do that? I don't know. Let's think. Let's do some research. Then when it starts working, Salesforce starts using it for themselves. When the CRM becomes mature enough, they go and start selling it. And that's when they brought it to market by saying, hey, it's CRM without the software. Not true. There was software, just not in your walls, right? And in doing so, they had to develop technology to host the software. So they said, we can do that, but we do need to build our custom solution for hosting. for software, for running the software. And at some point in time, that became mature enough so they could start offering hosting services as a product, which was called Salesforce, the AppForce cloud, the cloud of Salesforce, where you can run applications on Salesforce infrastructure. And there's a point 10 years later or 20 years later, when running a cloud like offering services like Azure or AWS or Salesforce, that's just very common. It's commoditized. In this space, it's a game of volume and low margins. In this space, it's a game of fairly large margins and sometimes lower volumes, right? So this, what I explained to you here, is called the Wardley map. The Wardley map takes it's exactly what Adi told you a minute ago. It's taking the value chain, expressing it as a network of activities and spreading it out by maturity, whether it's research or something that's commoditized. And we always have something that is called an anchor point. An anchor point is that thing up here. In this case, it is the client of a retail business that sells clothes, fashion for women. That was the Wardley map we used for Lola Lisa in 2011 when they did their first e-commerce site. You can put up here the end customer or a partner in your network or a key stakeholder. But if it is the client, as it is the case here, the first question you ask is, what do they need? Well, it's our segment of clients. They are ladies who are looking for affordable, nice clothes that they can use at home or for work. And we know that they need to be affordable, they need to be fashionable, they need to be nice to wear, they need to be comfortable, they need to be a number of things. What do we do to make them access that? Well, we need to have shops, we need to have stores that are very visible to them. We need to have a website they can see from their home, so that's a bit more visible because it's closer to them. They can see that from their homes. And we're going to build an e-commerce operation on it. What do we need for the website to function? Well, we need to have hosting. What do we need for the e-com to function? They need carts, they need to have a catalog, they need to have a product information management, they need to have warehouse management systems. What we did was design on the chart, everything that's red was everything they had before they would deploy an e-commerce site. Everything that is red is what they had, everything that is blue or green is what they needed to be able to run an e-commerce operation. And we decided that some of the stuff would be stuff that we would build in-house, the green, and some of the stuff were stuff that we would outsource, the blue. As you can see here, one of the questions we had was, for instance, like this, the order management system is the system that allows you to transform something that somebody wants to buy. Say you want to buy a red dress and yellow socks, and you want to buy yellow socks and a blue shirt, and you want to buy a blue shirt and a red dress. From the standpoint of fulfillment, I'm not interested who actually needs what. What I'm interested in is how do I go get in my warehouse enough blue shirts of the right size, enough red dresses of the right size, enough yellow socks of the right size, and bring them to a place where they're going to be assembled and fulfilled and ordered. That's called order management. In those days, there was no order management system on the market. We had to build it. There was no order management system that would do what we needed, because we also needed to be able to manage returns in the stores, which didn't exist. So in deciding about whether we would build or not, the question was how fast this thing will become available as a product that we can rent. Because if in the next 2 months, there is a product out there that does exactly the same thing and we have to pay 500 euros per month to access it, maybe it's better to pay 500 euros per month for something that is maintained by someone else instead of spending 70,000 euros developing it ourselves. It's a make or buy decision, but you can represent it on the map, because on this map, what you can see is that things move from this part of the map to this part of the map as the world matures. When you start something new, you are here. And when that something new has become mainstream, you are here. If you are in 2018-19 and you're OpenAI, GPT is here. Today, GPT is here, maybe here. If you're in 2022, your OpenAI and you have ChatGPT is here. Now it's probably here. So there's things slide. It's called movement, right? So when you think about digital innovation, where you decide to put money, it's going to be a matter of how fast things will mature. If your cycle of development is much longer than the time it takes for stuff to become very mature, don't invest, because you will lose on it. All right? That's a very fundamental point. That's the kind of stuff that for which you need that dynamic representation, because things go faster. That is also the nature of the digital firm. Okay? These days, I will just move that. This is another example of a Wordley map. This is Nike before digital and Nike after digital. I'll post the slides and you can take a look at it. It's pretty much the same logic. And if you have questions, let me know. But this is how we were representing, therefore, the digital firm until 3 years ago, because people didn't know what AI was and what machine learning was. Today, I tell people we also need a hybrid intelligence at the core of the business. We need the core of the business to have AI and people to run. We need to have an operating system that combines the AI capability, the machine intelligence, and the human intelligence. We need to hybridize the two forms of intelligence to create intelligent companies, not replace people by machines. We need to augment people with machine intelligence. And therefore, that's the model of the digital firm in my research, as being a layer of technology, a layer of culture and mindset, and something in the middle that's called an organizational brain for hybrid intelligence. All right? So if we see things this way, we understand there is both software and hardware, but some companies are there and some companies are not. Companies that do not have this culture and mindsets, companies that will not manage their stakeholders, companies that don't do iterations, that don't do experimentation, that don't have evidence-based management, where if you are the loudest voice, you will get your stuff done. And if you're not loud enough, but you have the right facts, you don't get a chance. These are not digital companies. They're dead if they continue like that. All right? Because they will be slower, less relevant, less good in their decision-making than companies that are competing and using these practices and having these tools. All right? Important stuff. This is the reality in which we are when we talk about digital innovation. Keep it in mind. It's going to be important, particularly for your Kiva thing for tomorrow. So I'm going to release you now. There's instructions about Kiva that are pretty clear. No stress. You have to look at the case, understand what Kiva is all about, and draw one business model canvas and one Wordley map. That's all I need from you for tomorrow. All right? There's more stuff. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but at least it was, we went through the introduction. Any questions about today's session? We meet again tomorrow morning. Any questions you have, let me know. If you want to drop questions by email, feel free to do so. And in the meantime, I'll be posting later today the slides we've seen today, plus access to Adi, the GPT that is going to be your companion for this course. And I'd be happy to have some feedback on how it behaves. And I'll also give you a link to if you have any needs to have a session of half an hour with me, it's going to be
And the list of the groups, please.
the groups are already in Canvas. Yes,
You will put the link on
I'm gonna stay here.
the link to those slides.
Checking the-
half an hour.
Yes, I will put everything on Canvas. Yes. Any other questions?
The meeting, how we schedule it.
I will give you a link for meetings. I will also give you a link to the GPT that is supporting this course. It's an experimentation. ADI stands for Alex Digital Innovation, or more accurately, Alexei Digital Innovation, because I have another generic teaching assistant that's called Alexei, who's trained on all my courses, and this is a specific case, a specific instance of Alexei. The configuration of ADI was produced by Alexei. So I use agents to generate other agents. They're on Canvas in principle. You cannot see them.
Yes, you can see that. I saw them yesterday.
Let me show
You
you.
have to go to your group and then people, and they can see.
Okay, let me show you. So we have in people in principle, you can see groups for case studies and groups for the exam. These have been generated automatically. There are 4 groups for case studies and 5 groups for the exam. So you have a bit less people in the exam one. You have a number of assignments here that you can check out. This one is a case study, so it shouldn't be here. Anyway, I'll just. Is that good? You have access to everything?
Yes.
Lovely. All right.
For the exam.
If you have any questions or if you need anything, I'll be connected in the afternoon. So just drop me a line if you want. All right?
With Thomas.
Amazing. So thanks for your attention today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we have class downstairs, and for the rest of this month it's going to be the same room downstairs. I think it's 107 or something like that.
Yeah, we're normally always there.
All right, lovely. Okay, so see you tomorrow. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I